Thank you, Madam Chair. There are a lot of things the federal government does. A lot of them are unpopular. Of the most unpopular parts of the federal government, you probably have the IRS, and even more unpopular Congress, whose approval rating seems to hover these days between 9 and 11%, making it less popular than Fidel Castro in America.
It depends on whether they poll immediate family. I
Yes,
think.
yes, exactly, exactly. Yeah, it might even be worse in some of those polls. But one of the few things the federal government does that is popular exists in the National Park Service. People love their national parks. They want to be able to use them. They don't want to see them threatened. So many are concerned, particularly in states like mine, where we have a lot of national parks that are national treasures. People are concerned when they hear about the maintenance backlog and the fact that 62% of the public lands backlog can be found within the National Parks Service. That's of concern to them. We'll start with you, Mr. Cameron. Would you agree that under certain conditions, the public interest might be better served by finding ways to fund the backlog and to make sure that we maintain adequately our national parks? Would you agree with that as a general statement?
I certainly would, Senator Lee. I think we need to look at any and all options and seriously consider them.
Would you agree with me that there are some lands that have been identified as suitable for disposal by the federal government?
Yes, Senator. General Services Administration runs an annual process to try to identify those.
Do you have any sense as to what kind of revenue could be generated if that land were disposed of?
Not off the top of my head. I think the estimates are probably in the single billions of dollars, but I don't know the latest estimate from GSA.
Okay. That is a large sum of money, certainly. Do you know how often the BLM evaluates its lands for their suitability for disposal?
So BLM has a regular planning process on district by district basis on a cycle. If memory serves me correctly, I believe it's a 5-year cycle.
Okay. You have any idea approximately how many acres of land have been deemed suitable for disposal?
No, I do not, but I'm happy to provide that for the record.
Okay. Would you agree that under certain circumstances it might make sense to sell some of that land in order to be able to keep up with the maintenance backlog in order to overcome it?
So the General Services Administration has a process in place for divesting of federal land and federal assets, and at the tail end of the process, it can be sold, yes.
Ms. Lago, how about you? Do you know how many acres of land approximately the Forest Service has identified as suitable for disposal?
I don't believe we have authority for disposing of land. We have authority to convey facilities and the land associated with it, but we don't typically dispose of land. We use it for advantageous land exchanges where we're trying to block up ownership or obtain some critical wildlife habitat or connectivity or something like that. Okay, so you're saying there's no regular evaluation of Forest Service land to consider whether all of it needs to be under federal ownership? That's right.
Okay. Mr. Cameron, let's get back to you for a minute. Across all the federal land management agencies, compliance with federal regulation contributes to the massive maintenance backlog, the very same backlog that we're here to discuss today. When your agency estimates the cost of a project, do you separate the cost of regulatory compliance from the rest of the cost of construction?
Senator, I don't believe we do that. We take for granted that we have to comply with the federal acquisition regulation. We take for granted that we have to comply with Davis-Bacon Act where it applies, for instance, and various other constraints. I'd point out that the National Historic Preservation Act can sometimes produce some challenges. If we need to try to reproduce concrete the way it was made in the 1720s, that can be a lot more expensive than the way it's made now.
Yeah, I've heard. You can't just get that at the Home Depot. Would there be a way of calculating that, that breakdown, either on the, it seems to me that it would be very helpful if you could calculate that cost, either on an individual project level or in addition to that, also having it on the maintenance backlog level as well, so that we can figure out what percentage of the maintenance backlog generally is attributable to regulatory compliance and what percentage of the cost on any particular project is attributable to the same.
Senator, I know we've done some thinking along those lines. What I'd like to do is respond to, for the record, and try to give you a more accurate and complete answer about how we might approach that.
Okay. I see my time has expired. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator King.